World War II shocked Americans and left them wondering what might lay in America's future. Fears of mass unemployment and lack of housing ran through everyone's mind. But in those times of uncertainty, the middle class was born and changed the way Americans lived and thought. After the war, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1994 was signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It was intended to smoothly reintegrate soldiers back into society. Upon their return, veterans were offered education and training, loan guarantees, and unemployment pay. Over 1 million veterans attended college in 1946 and constituted 40 to 50% of the students in higher education at the time. With veterans now attending college, the stereotype that higher education was only for upper-class children was shattered. The increased number of adults with degrees led to a new middle-class lifestyle. Veterans were able to land white-collar jobs, buy a home, and establish a family. The successes of veterans fed into the new American dream, one where everyone could go to college and be successful. American society changed its perspective, and they began to see higher education as the key to success. Previously, the Great Depression limited family sizes due to financial hardship. People worried that raising a family during those difficult times would be impossible. But America's victory in World War II also led to prosperity for the country. In 1945, the gross national product was $212 billion. By 1960, that number had risen to $503 billion. And after the war, soldiers returned home with opportunities to go to school, start a business, or go to work. All of these factors led to a sense of security in Americans, which encouraged them to grow their families. Women who had previously worked in the war effort returned home and reestablished the traditional family dynamic. The men were the breadwinners, and their wives worked in the home. Out of 76 million baby boomers, 24% of them are minorities. Often plagued by hardship and oppression, very few minorities were part of the middle class. In 1940, 12% of African Americans self-identified as middle class, compared to 34% of white Americans. By 1961, only 13% of African Americans earned more than $10,000 or more a year. With more citizens arriving back from the war, there was a new problem: housing. Levittown was the answer to housing shortage. Levittown is the name of 7 suburban developments created in the United States by William Levitt. By using his father's construction company, Levitt transformed former farmlands into a suburban community housing thousands of veterans returning from World War II. He began his first housing development during the early years of the Great Depression. His initial attempts to enter the field of low-cost housing were unsuccessful, but by 1947, his first mass-produced housing development opened in Long Island, New York. Levitt's manufactured suburban houses allowed working-class people to live in the suburbs rather than the crowded city. The development of the manufactured homes linked the suburbs to the middle class. Workers commuted to city jobs and returned to spend time with their family in residential areas. As a result, many Levittown-inspired suburbs emerged and altered a variety of consumer trends. Religion was a major part of American culture. Every suburban neighborhood had a church in the area. In the post-war era, there was over 70% membership in the Christian faith. Same-race, different-sex marriage were among the traditional values of the middle class, and divorces were very uncommon. Religion was used as a unifying factor, and churches were a center of community. It was also at this time that the phrase "under God" was added to the Pledge of Allegiance by Congress. Along with the creation of the middle class came the traditional American nuclear family. The nuclear family consisted of the husband, wife, and their children. The father was usually the breadwinner of the family, and the mother was most often a housewife. During this time, American beliefs began to change. One of the biggest changes was in how to raise a child. Previously, Dr. Luther Emmett Holt and psychologist John B. Watson were the leaders in child-rearing knowledge. They instructed parents to raise their children in a no-nonsense and attached way in order to raise them properly. This included ignoring babies when they cried and scolding them severely when they did something wrong. Beliefs changed when Dr. Benjamin Spock, a pediatrician, suggested a more middle ground approach in his book, The Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care, that parents should be affectionate but firm. He believed that following one's instincts was the best way to raise a child. These ideas changed the way people viewed parenting. Spock's work influenced 2 generations of parents. In this new era, the craze of consumer culture had begun. Families needed furniture and appliances to fill their new homes, and with the introduction of credit, buying was easier than ever. The most important piece of technology to the suburban homeowner was the invention of the television. In 1960, 87% of households in the U.S. own televisions. This number shows just how many Americans participated in consumer culture, and many bought several appliances to compete with their neighbors and maintain their image. Having the latest product became a status symbol. Due to the increase of television ownership, corporations increased their advertising budget from 3% in 1950 to 17% in 1965. The target consumers were women, as they were in control of the household. Toy companies also took advantage of this situation because children were most likely to see ads and beg for their parents to buy them toys. Wartime inventions like the flashlight, the microwave, penicillin, and more were converted to household use. The creation of the television also brought popular television shows like Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best. The shows exemplified the stereotypical white middle-class American family, contributing to the American dream of being part of the middle class. The post-war era was filled with new innovations and advancements. Life expectancy in the 1950s raised about 6 years from the last decade. This was made possible by advancements in medicine and technology. Jonas Salk created the polio vaccine, who released it for free. Death rates from influenza and pneumonia dropped to 1/10 of their previous levels, and death from infectious diseases in general decreased as well. Another accomplishment in medicine at the time was the release of birth control. In 1960, Envoy 10, the first birth control, was sold in the United States. The creation of oral contraceptives gave women control over their own reproduction, empowering them to make their own decisions. American thinking also changed about sexuality. This occurred when Alfred Kinsey's books on sexuality of the human male and female were published. They revealed how Americans were not as repressed as previously thought, which contradicted traditional beliefs, and was an extremely controversial topic. These developments helped contribute to the sexual revolution of the 60s. The creation of the middle class changed the American way of life and beliefs. The baby boom also led to new housing and new lifestyles.